Hello everyone, I'm Arali and today I want to talk about my fourth Elite Specialization speculation for End of Dragons. Today I want to talk about the Necromancer. The Elite Specialization would be called the Vampire. Now I want to talk about the reason why I called it the Vampire. Now when I was thinking about this specialization, I was thinking maybe I could call it a Blood Mage. The problem with that is that we already have a line for the Necromancer that is called Blood Magic, so I didn't think that having a line that's called Blood Mage and having a line called Blood Magic would really work, but I kind of didn't want to call it a vampire because this is Tyria and do we really have something like vampires? But then I thought about how we have runes that have vampirism on them. So it's clearly already a concept that exists in Tyria. So I think having something called the vampire wouldn't be that terrible because, these are not the traditional vampires that we know. They're just, necromancers that use blood magic. So with that being said, the weapon it would get would be a sword main hand. I think a lot of people have suggested this. I've always liked the idea of just using a one-handed sword. Of course it would be main hand, but I really like the idea of just having a sword and just being close range, kind of like how the Reaper has it, but the Reaper is a little bit different because you get a whole different set of shroud skills, so I'm going to get into mechanic here. So for the vampire, the life force bar would turn red, of course, because it's all blood themed, and you would get access to the blood shroud. And so now in blood shroud, you would siphon health from your enemies around you, and your shroud skills would heal allies around you. For example, the shroud 4 skill, life transfer, actually gives you life force. Now in the blood shroud, this would change to giving you health, or maybe giving your allies health, and that would kind of go in conjunction with the transfusion trait that gives in the blood magic line, which gives healing out to allies and revives them as well. So it kind of builds on top of each other and becomes even more of like a healing oriented kind of thing. So the blood shroud wouldn't just be healing, but you would, because you're still doing damage with life transfer, but you would pump out a lot more healing. And I think that would be interesting to use. Maybe have one of the skills, the skill 5, be like a blood well in which you can sit in and it causes like bleeding to your enemies and healing to your allies. Thematically, there's a lot of different things they could do with a, blood mage or vampire. So it's like a hybrid between a healing and a damage type of specialization. For the weapon skills, I didn't really think of like a whole set of them because it's just a main hand sword, so there's only 3 skills. But I was thinking something like it absorbs health like the Dagger 2 does on Necromancer already, and it does have that red blood theme already. So it could also deal bleeding damage on a few of the attacks there and kind of give it that like a condition damage kind of thing. So you can kind of go with both things, and I'll go into that a little bit later because there's something with the traits that I did that I think really works out with that. Next, the utility skills, they would get a new kind of utility skills called Hex Skills. Now in Guild Wars 1, the Curses line for the Necromancer had a lot of hexes that would do damage if the enemy was attacked by physical damage. Now these would kind of work the same way, so these hexes would do certain effects every time the enemy is hit with a weapon attack. Maybe siphon health, give boons to yourself and your allies, or give conditions to your enemies. So these, you hex your enemies, and anytime you attack with a weapon, it does some kind of effect. So those would be a new type of utility skill. Then for trades, so this is the most important part here. So the top line for the trades, we get three lines, and the top line would concentrate on healing, which would increase siphon effects from spells and skills and deal with healing a lot. I know blood magic does that, but it would do it on a more concentrated on the actual elite specialization. So dealing with the blood shroud and siphoning from the hexes or something like that would be increased in the top line. The middle line would deal with condition damage, specifically like bleeding damage, and maybe even have it to the point where a percentage of your bleeding damage transfers back to you as health. Kind of like how the scepter trade also gives you the health back depending on how much condition damage you deal. So this would be just specifically for bleeding and other condition type of damage. So the second line would have to do with the condition damage, and it would just give you a good option between healing and condition. Talking about the third line, it would have to do with just pure damage. Maybe increase the damage you do on your sword attacks, maybe the recharge on them. So all three lines kind of give you a distinct feel on what you want to do with this elite specialization. You can utilize the blood shroud, maybe have the second line even do, instead of siphoning health from your enemies, you actually cause bleeding damage, so you can really go into what you want to do with your character and give you three distinct options on, you're not set in, okay, this is what I have to do, because Scourge was a lot of, barrier and quote unquote healing, because it's not really a healing spec, it's more about like building up barrier and stuff like that, and Reaper was more about like straight up damage. Yes, the Grandmaster trait does deal bleeding on chill and things like that, but it was more straight up damage. But this elite specialization gives you an option of what you want to do, and it really makes your character feel distinct depending on which line you're using. Lastly, I want to talk about the setting of Cantha and where I would think vampires fit in. I think having the Kurziks maybe go into the line of being vampires, maybe that developed over the last 250 years. They became like more necromantic, and in Guild Wars 1 they were monks, and they were more, they felt like they were above the rest and things like that, and it felt more like they were like holy people, like more because they had cathedrals and they kind of had that theme of like religion in there. But I think maybe because of how everything that's happening in Cantha over the last 250 years kind of turned them away from that and made them go towards being more necromantic and dark, and having them become vampires and do more of like blood rituals and things like that. I think that would be very interesting. Of course, there's the other thought that now the Echo Vault forest is now all like a regular forest, so they would maybe go more naturey. But I'd like to think that maybe there was something that halted the turning back of the Echo Vault forest, and they're still in their stone cathedrals that are built into their trees, and everything is still, that's a very dark and gloomy setting. It was really cool in Guild Wars 1, but I think it fits a lot more with having necromancers, because they had like these gargoyles and these statues that would come alive and stuff, and having them turn to the dark side kind of, and having them become these necromancers with the blood rituals and things like that in order to defend themselves maybe against the Ministry of Purity or something like that. I think that would be very interesting. And I think one thing to note is that ArenaNet has not talked about the Echo Vault Forest, and they have not even previewed it in any of the things. They showed the Jade Sea, they showed the big city, Kaineng, and they showed Xingjie, but they haven't shown the Echo Vault Forest. And I think there's probably something going on there that they don't quite want us to know. So it'd be interesting to have it turn out that it's still, all stone, and not much has changed. And now maybe all of the nature creatures like the wardens and things like that have all died out, because it's, after so long of just being in a stone forest, they maybe ended up not surviving, and maybe they're the everlasting trees that they had that they sang to. I forgot the name of them, but they had those trees that they sang to, and that kind of gave them the abilities to have the juggernauts and things like that. Maybe they died out and now they're trying to find other ways, other magics to survive. And, you know, so I really think it would fit with the Kurziks, and I think it would fit the setting of Cantha. So, but yeah, I think that's all I have for this elite specialization. As always, I want to hear everyone's opinion and would like to hear what you thought, and maybe something that you would like to add to the vampire, maybe a different kind of elite specialization. But yeah, that's it, and I'll see everyone in the next video.